When we talk about narcissistic personality, most conversations focus on behavior, arrogance, lack of empathy, manipulation, entitlement. But underneath all of that is a deeper psychological truth that often gets overlooked. A narcissist's most important relationship is not with a partner, a child, a friend, or even a career. It is with themselves. At the emotional core of narcissist relationships lies a lifelong bond with their own needs, their own image, and their own fragile sense of self. Everyone else becomes secondary, useful mainly as sources of validation, admiration, or emotional regulation. This is why so many people who love narcissistic individuals end up confused and hurt. They assume that relationships are meant to be mutual, that care flows both ways. But for a narcissist, connection is not built on reciprocity. It is built on function. People exist in their world as mirrors, props, or emotional supply. The moment someone stops serving that purpose, the relationship suddenly feels disposable. That can be shocking for partners, heartbreaking for children, and destabilizing for friends and colleagues who believed they mattered more than they actually did. Understanding this emotional self-focus is essential if you have ever tried to make sense of a narcissist's choices. Their decisions are not guided by love, fairness, or long-term responsibility. They are guided by what protects the ego in that moment. Praise will always matter more than truth. Control will always feel safer than vulnerability. Image will almost always win over intimacy. And when conflicts arise, the narcissist's instinct is not to repair the relationship, but to defend the self at any cost. This does not mean narcissists never appear caring or generous. They often do, especially when it benefits how they are seen. But those moments are usually strategic rather than deeply relational. For the people around them, this creates a painful cycle of hope, followed by disappointment, connection followed by emotional abandonment. In this discussion, we are going to explore why this pattern repeats across nearly every area of a narcissist's life: romantic partnerships, parenting, friendships, and work. We'll look at how their inner world shapes their outer behavior, why accountability feels like an attack to them, and why expecting emotional fairness from a narcissistic personality so often leads to frustration and self-doubt. One of the biggest misunderstandings about narcissistic personality is the assumption that narcissists bond with people in the same way the rest of us do. Most human beings develop their earliest emotional attachment with caregivers. From those early bonds, we learn empathy, trust, mutual care, and emotional connection. But for someone who grows into a narcissistic pattern, something very different happens. Their first and most powerful attachment is not to a person at all. It is to their own ego and self-image. This is where narcissistic self-absorption truly begins. Early in life, many narcissists learn, often because of inconsistent parenting, excessive criticism, overpraise, or emotional neglect, that vulnerability feels dangerous. Real emotional connection requires openness, and openness feels risky. So instead of bonding with people, they learn to bond with an image of themselves. That image becomes their emotional safe place. Over time, protecting that image becomes more important than understanding anyone else's feelings. As children, they may discover that appearing special gets them attention, or that denying mistakes keeps them safe from shame. These early lessons slowly shape a self-centered personality. Instead of learning how to relate to others, they learn how to perform for others. The focus shifts from "how do I connect" to "how am I seen?" That subtle shift changes everything. As this pattern develops, the narcissist begins to experience other people not as separate individuals with their own needs, but as tools for ego regulation. Friends become audiences. Partners become sources of admiration. Children become extensions of their identity. Co-workers become competitors or stepping stones. This is what we mean when we talk about narcissist emotional attachment. The attachment is not truly to the person, but to what the person provides. Think of a very common real-life example. A narcissistic parent may proudly show off a child's achievements to the world, yet show very little interest in that child's inner emotional life. The child is loved as long as they make the parent look good. The moment the child struggles, disagrees, or develops independent needs, the warmth disappears. The bond was never really with the child, it was with the reflection the child provided. Or consider romantic relationships. In the beginning, a narcissist may appear intensely attached, showering a partner with attention and praise. It can feel like a deep bond, but what they are actually bonding with is the way the partner makes them feel about themselves. When real relationship work is required, compromise, accountability, empathy, The narcissist often pulls away or becomes resentful. Their loyalty is to their comfort, not to the person they claim to love. Over time, this self-focused bond becomes stronger and stronger. The more a narcissist relies on ego protection to navigate life, the less capable they become of genuine emotional intimacy. Admitting fault, considering another person's perspective, or prioritizing someone else's needs begins to feel like a threat to survival. So they double down on self-absorption instead of growth. From the outside, this can look cruel or cold, but psychologically, it is more accurate to see it as emotional limitation. Narcissists do not experience relationships as shared emotional spaces. They experience them as stages on which their identity must be protected at all costs. That is why they can switch from affectionate to indifferent so quickly, why apologies feel impossible, and why empathy seems to disappear whenever their ego feels challenged. Understanding this early bond with self-image helps explain almost everything else that follows in a narcissist's life. Their conflicts, their manipulation, their inability to maintain healthy long-term relationships, all of it grows out of this fundamental reality. The person they are most attached to, and often the only person they truly protect, is themselves. In this discussion, we are going to explore why this pattern repeats across nearly every area of a narcissist's life: romantic partnerships, parenting, friendships, and work. We'll look at how their inner world shapes their outer behavior, why accountability feels like an attack to them, and why expecting emotional fairness from a narcissistic personality so often leads to frustration and self-doubt. For most people, relationships are built on the idea of we. Two separate individuals come together, share experiences, negotiate differences, and grow alongside each other. But a narcissist in relationships does not operate from that framework at all. Instead of seeing a partner, friend, or child as an independent person, the narcissist experiences them as an extension of their own identity. Other people become supporting characters in the narcissist's personal story. This is why so many close relationships with narcissistic individuals feel strangely one-sided. The narcissist assumes that everyone around them should think the way they think, want what they want, and prioritize what they prioritize. When that doesn't happen, they don't see it as normal human difference. They see it as betrayal or disobedience. Their world revolves around a central question: how does this affect me? Several psychological mechanisms keep this pattern firmly in place. Narcissistic entitlement convinces them that their needs should always come first. A deep lack of empathy makes it difficult, sometimes impossible, for them to truly imagine another person's emotional experience. And an intense need for control pushes them to manage the people around them rather than relate to them. Because of this, spouses are expected to provide admiration and emotional labor without asking for much in return. Friends are valued when they agree, flatter, and support, but quickly devalued if they set boundaries. Even children are often treated as reflections of the narcissist's success rather than as developing individuals with their own feelings. When a child struggles or shows independence, the narcissistic parent may react with irritation instead of concern. For the people close to them, this creates a painful cycle of emotional neglect by narcissists. Loved ones keep hoping for mutual care and understanding, only to discover again and again that the relationship is organized around one person's comfort and image. What feels like intimacy to the narcissist often feels like invisibility to everyone else. Over time, partners and family members begin to realize that they are not being loved as people. They are being used as roles in someone else's life script. In this discussion, we are going to explore why this pattern repeats across nearly every area of a narcissist's life: romantic partnerships, parenting, friendships, and work. We'll look at how their inner world shapes their outer behavior, why accountability feels like an attack to them, and why expecting emotional fairness from a narcissistic personality so often leads to frustration and self-doubt. At the heart of every narcissistic pattern is a simple but painful truth. A narcissist's deepest loyalty is not to people, principles, or relationships. It is to their own comfort, image, and needs. This is why so many survivors eventually ask the same exhausted question: why narcissists are selfish even with the people they claim to love. For most of us, empathy acts like an emotional compass. It guides our choices and helps us consider how our actions affect others. But a narcissistic lack of empathy changes that equation completely. When empathy conflicts with self-interest, empathy is the first thing to be abandoned. The narcissist puts themselves first almost automatically because protecting their ego feels more urgent than protecting a relationship. You can see this play out in everyday life. In romantic relationships, a narcissistic partner may promise loyalty and commitment, yet cheat the moment they feel bored or underappreciated. They will justify it easily, telling themselves they deserved attention or excitement. In families, a narcissistic parent might publicly present as loving and devoted, but privately dismiss a child's feelings if those feelings require time, patience, or sacrifice. In the workplace, a narcissistic colleague may take credit for someone else's work without hesitation if it improves their status. What shocks people is not just the behavior itself, but the absence of real remorse afterward. When confronted, the narcissist rarely says, "I hurt you and I'm sorry." Instead, they minimize, blame, or rewrite the story so they remain the hero. From their perspective, betrayal is acceptable if it protects their comfort. Manipulation is reasonable if it preserves their image. Discarding someone is justified if that person becomes inconvenient. This lifelong bond with themselves acts like an emotional shield. It allows them to avoid guilt, dodge accountability, and move on quickly while others are left devastated. Partners, friends, and coworkers often wait for the narcissist to finally understand the damage they caused, not realizing that genuine self-reflection would threaten the very identity the narcissist is built around. Recognizing this pattern is not about becoming cynical, it is about becoming clear-eyed. When you understand that a narcissist's priority system will almost always place them at the center, their confusing choices suddenly begin to make painful sense. For the people close to them, this creates a painful cycle of emotional neglect by narcissists. Loved ones keep hoping for mutual care and understanding, only to discover again and again that the relationship is organized around one person's comfort and image. What feels like intimacy to the narcissist often feels like invisibility to everyone else. Over time, partners and family members begin to realize that they are not being loved as people. They are being used as roles in someone else's life script. In this discussion, we are going to explore why this pattern repeats across nearly every area of a narcissist's life: romantic partnerships, parenting, friendships, and work. We'll look at how their inner world shapes their outer behavior, why accountability feels like an attack to them, and why expecting emotional fairness from a narcissistic personality so often leads to frustration and self-doubt. One of the most confusing aspects of being close to a narcissistic person is realizing how emotionally unreliable they are. At first, they may seem devoted, passionate, and fully invested. They make big promises, show intense affection, and speak confidently about loyalty. But over time, people discover a painful pattern. With a narcissist, everything is conditional. This is the core of narcissist emotional inconsistency. Because the narcissist's strongest bond is always to themselves, their emotions shift according to whatever protects that bond. Affection is given when it brings admiration. Promises are kept only when they are convenient. Loyalty lasts only as long as it serves the narcissist's comfort and image. The moment a relationship requires sacrifice, patience, or accountability, their behavior can change almost overnight. To maintain this emotional loyalty to themselves, narcissists rely heavily on narcissist manipulation tactics. They rewrite history so they never appear at fault. If a partner confronts them about hurtful behavior, the story suddenly changes. "That's not what happened. You're too sensitive," or "you misunderstood me." Instead of acknowledging another person's pain, they minimize it, deflect it, or blame the other person for even bringing it up. This constant revision of reality allows them to avoid guilt and protect their self-image. From the outside, it can feel like emotional whiplash. One day they are warm and attentive, the next day distant and dismissive. Family members and partners are left wondering which version is real. Trusting a narcissist becomes incredibly difficult because their words and actions rarely stay aligned for long. What makes this especially destabilizing is that the narcissist often sounds sincere in the moment. They may truly mean their promises when they say them, but sincerity tied to self-interest is fragile. As soon as circumstances change, the promise loses its value. For the people who love them, this creates chronic confusion. They keep hoping for stability, consistency, and emotional safety, not realizing that a narcissist's internal world simply isn't built to provide those things. Reliability requires empathy and accountability, and those qualities directly threaten the narcissist's lifelong commitment to protecting themselves above all else. For the people close to them, this creates a painful cycle of emotional neglect by narcissists. Loved ones keep hoping for mutual care and understanding, only to discover again and again that the relationship is organized around one person's comfort and image. What feels like intimacy to the narcissist often feels like invisibility to everyone else. Over time, partners and family members begin to realize that they are not being loved as people. They are being used as roles in someone else's life script. In this discussion, we are going to explore why this pattern repeats across nearly every area of a narcissist's life: romantic partnerships, parenting, friendships, and work. We'll look at how their inner world shapes their outer behavior, why accountability feels like an attack to them, and why expecting emotional fairness from a narcissistic personality so often leads to frustration and self-doubt. To truly understand narcissistic behavior, you have to understand how fiercely a narcissist protects the relationship they have with themselves. That internal bond, the fragile narcissistic ego, is guarded more intensely than any marriage, friendship, or family connection. Everything else in their life becomes secondary to keeping that self-image intact. This is why narcissist and accountability rarely go together. For most people, accountability is uncomfortable but ultimately healthy. It allows growth, repair, and deeper relationships. But for a narcissist, being held accountable feels less like feedback and more like an emotional attack. Admitting fault would mean admitting imperfection, and imperfection threatens the carefully constructed identity they rely on to feel safe. So instead of reflecting, they defend. When their self-image is challenged, many respond with narcissistic rage, explosive anger, harsh criticism, or cruel words designed to silence the other person. Others react with cold withdrawal, stonewalling, or emotional shutdown. Both reactions serve the same purpose: to avoid facing anything that might crack the mirror they are constantly trying to polish. Imagine a partner calmly saying, "When you did that, it really hurt me." In a healthy relationship, that opens a conversation. With a narcissist, it often triggers blame. "You're too sensitive," "You made me do it," or "You always cause problems." The goal is not to understand the pain, it is to erase it so their self-concept remains untouched. Over years and decades, this pattern traps narcissists in shallow, unstable relationships. Real intimacy requires vulnerability, compromise, and the ability to say, "I was wrong." But those experiences feel dangerous to someone whose primary commitment is to protecting their ego. As a result, conflicts never truly get resolved. They just get buried, denied, or turned back on the other person. For the people around them, this creates exhaustion and heartbreak. Loved ones keep hoping that one day the narcissist will choose the relationship over their pride. But again and again, the narcissist chooses themselves. Understanding this doesn't make the behavior acceptable, but it does make it clearer. It explains why meaningful change is so rare and why so many relationships with narcissistic individuals remain stuck in the same painful loop year after year. For the people close to them, this creates a painful cycle of emotional neglect by narcissists. Loved ones keep hoping for mutual care and understanding, only to discover again and again that the relationship is organized around one person's comfort and image. What feels like intimacy to the narcissist often feels like invisibility to everyone else. Over time, partners and family members begin to realize that they are not being loved as people. They are being used as roles in someone else's life script. In this discussion, we are going to explore why this pattern repeats across nearly every area of a narcissist's life: romantic partnerships, parenting, friendships, and work. We'll look at how their inner world shapes their outer behavior, why accountability feels like an attack to them, and why expecting emotional fairness from a narcissistic personality so often leads to frustration and self-doubt. When you finally understand that a narcissist's deepest, most consistent bond is with themselves, something important begins to shift. Their behavior stops feeling mysterious and starts feeling predictable. More importantly, it stops feeling personal. Understanding narcissists at this level allows survivors to step out of the endless loop of self-blame and confusion. So many people spend years asking, "Why wasn't I enough? Why didn't they care more? What could I have done differently?" But once you recognize that the narcissist's self-focus is a fixed psychological pattern, those questions lose their power. Their inability to show empathy, loyalty, or genuine reciprocity was never a reflection of your value. It was a limitation inside them. This insight becomes the foundation for healing from narcissistic relationships. When you see clearly, you can begin to set realistic boundaries instead of chasing unrealistic change. Setting boundaries with narcissists means accepting that you cannot appeal to their empathy, because empathy is not what guides them. Boundaries have to be firm, practical, and based on protecting your own emotional well-being rather than trying to fix theirs. It also means releasing false hope. Hope keeps many people stuck far longer than they need to be. Hope that the narcissist will suddenly become accountable, compassionate, or emotionally safe. Understanding their lifelong loyalty to themselves helps you emotionally detach from expectations that were never realistic to begin with. Detachment does not mean bitterness. It means clarity. It means learning to respond instead of react, to stop over-explaining, to stop trying to win arguments that can never be won. It means focusing your energy on relationships where mutual care actually exists. The most empowering takeaway is this: you are not responsible for managing someone else's ego. You are not required to shrink yourself to keep a narcissist comfortable. Your worth does not depend on their approval. Moving forward, protect your peace, trust your perceptions, and give your time and heart to people who can truly meet you in a shared emotional space. That is where real connection lives, and that is what you deserve. For the people close to them, this creates a painful cycle of emotional neglect by narcissists. Loved ones keep hoping for mutual care and understanding, only to discover again and again that the relationship is organized around one person's comfort and image. What feels like intimacy to the narcissist often feels like invisibility to everyone else. Over time, partners and family members begin to realize that they are not being loved as people. They are being used as roles in someone else's life script. In this discussion, we are going to explore why this pattern repeats across nearly every area of a narcissist's life: romantic partnerships, parenting, friendships, and work. We'll look at how their inner world shapes their outer behavior, why accountability feels like an attack to them, and why expecting emotional fairness from a narcissistic personality so often leads to frustration and self-doubt.